It is great to be with you on March the 19th, read through the Word. And I don't know if it has escaped you like it has me, but I just looked down and realized it's the 19th of March. It's almost, we're halfway through the month of March. I don't know where the time goes. Anyway, some of those moments just hit me. The older that I get, they hit me in these, and I'm like, how did this happen? And then how did we get through Deuteronomy? I know. You didn't think you were going to get through Job ever. And then Leviticus and Numbers. And now Deuteronomy. And you did it. You have gotten through some really difficult parts of Scripture. So maybe treat yourself to a piece of Easter candy today, or a pat on the back, or an extra cup of coffee, or a little extra Dr. Pepper in your cup, because you know that's my drink of choice. So, deep in the curses. First of all, God likes the shock and awe, doesn't he? I mean, he's done shock and awe throughout the whole our whole time reading so far. And I don't know about you, but I'm very, very grateful for Jesus. I'm very, very grateful for grace. And does God still use shock and awe today? I think he does. I think he does. Do we see it as they saw it then? I don't think we do. I think we're too distracted by lots of other things to realize the natural disasters that happen, the things that are going on in our world is God's way of saying, hey, hey. Anyways, that's a lesson for another day. But tucked in the curses, did you notice that attitude matters? I just chuckle at this because our key verse says in verse 47 of chapter 28, if you do not serve the Lord your God with joy and enthusiasm for the benefits you have received, you will, and this is going into verse 48, you will serve your enemies with the Lord, whom the Lord will send against you. You will be left hungry, thirsty, naked, and lacking in everything. The Lord will put an iron yoke on your neck, oppressing you harshly until he has destroyed you. Again, with the shock and awe, but they experienced that. And surely saying this, they would get it, right? I realize that God doesn't deal with us like this anymore. He doesn't deal with his people like this anymore because why? Can you answer why? I'm sure you can. Because Jesus fulfilled the law. So this law no longer applies. But it definitely speaks into what God values as important. And that is today, what we're going to talk about, what he values as important, is service with joy and enthusiasm. I remember when my Griffin was little, not my daughter, my son, when he was little. And in fact, it may have been even like last week. He's almost 21. And he still does this. Not with the frequency that he did when he was younger, but this is typical. When I ask him to do something, ask him to do something, ask him to do something, and then finally I asked him again, and there's attitude. there's hurriedness, there's halfway doing things. It's like I have totally inconvenienced him. And you can tell he does not have a happy heart and a cheerful disposition. And yes, he got the job done, but he did it with such a poor attitude. To me, it's like, why? Forget it. I'd rather do it myself. Number one, so I'll know it's done right, because you're obviously not doing it right because you don't feel like doing it and you're being ugly about it, because you'd rather be out doing something else. I mean, this has been since he was little. And he would be so okay with me telling you the story because he knows this is how he is. So what God is telling us is that when we serve, let's serve with the right attitude, because it matters. It makes a difference. Now, what's interesting is the wording here. He uses the word joy and enthusiasm. And if you look at the Amplified version, and you look at the original, and I say Amplified because I don't know if you've ever used Amplified, but it's a really great translation. It will take some of the Hebrew and Greek words, depending on if you're in New Testament, it will be Greek. Old Testament will be Hebrew. But some of the words, and they put them in brackets, so you'll see what that word means. Not every word, because the Bible would be like this thick. But this particular verse, it has the insert around that word, and it's defined as goodness, which gives the idea of gratitude. Now that's interesting, because that word gratitude, it completely changes, right? The definition will completely change how we look at this, because he's saying the benefits you have received. So in other words, when you serve with the gratitude of all that God has given you. This is the very least that I can do to give back. It's not all about just, okay, I don't want to do this. It's really, God looks at the heart. And we know that because Scripture tells us God doesn't look on the outside appearance of man. He looks on the inside. But God is looking at our hearts and how we serve. I mean, he's really speaking prophecy over them right now with this curse. He's telling them, this is what's going to happen. If your attitude is not right, this is what's going to happen. You're going to serve your enemies, which, just a little bit of a spoiler alert, that's exactly what happens. That is exactly what happens to them. Now, how does that really apply to us? Because we don't have the Egypt's not our enemy, and Philistia and Edom and Assyria and Babylon and Syria. And no, those aren't our enemies, but we do have enemies. We do have enemies. When we have enemies around us, the world, we have the enemy of let's see, I jotted some down here, of our pride and chasing the things of this world, our passions, giving into our flesh. When we have the wrong attitude, like we don't live with an attitude of service with gratitude, then we are going to end up feeding and fueling the passions of our flesh and of the world around us. It will happen without us even knowing, honestly. We wake up one day and we're like, how did I get here? How did this happen? How did I get to the place where this was important to me? Because subliminally, incrementally, over time, we are lured into what the enemy thinks is important, what the world says is important. And all of a sudden, our service to the Lord is gone. The antidote to serving, to being self-serving, is God-serving. If we don't want to fall into this trap that God is warning his people about, falling into the trap of our enemies, which is the enemy of the flesh, the enemy of the world. If we don't want to fall into that trap, then we need to be serving God in some way and serving his kingdom in some way. There are service opportunities everywhere. It doesn't mean that you have to volunteer for everything that's going on at your church and signing up that way. It doesn't mean that at all. But serve the kingdom in any way that God sees fit to lead you. Maybe it is a meal to a neighbor who is sick. That is serving the kingdom. Maybe it is taking a church bulletin to a shut-in. I have some friends that do that because the shut-in can't get to church. But they want a bulletin to see all the things that are happening in the church. Right? You see what I'm saying? Your service can be the simplest thing. And what I've learned about service is that service to the Lord and to the kingdom, we think, oh, it's going to be inconvenient. Oh, I don't have time to do that. Really, we do. God won't call us to be to an assignment that's going to inconvenience, or let me say, it might inconvenience us, but it's not going to conflict with our major commitments in our life. That doesn't. He's not going to do that. He's not going to call you away from things that he's already put in your life that are important, your family, that kind of thing. But when he calls you to a place of service, it will complement already what you're doing. It might be a little inconvenient sometimes, but it will complement and fall in naturally into the schedule that you've already built for yourself and into the commitments that you already have. And when you are serving the Lord, there is joy. There really is. And when you serve others, whether they have as much as you or less than you, it shows, it demonstrates to you, if you have your eyes open and you have the right attitude, not, well, I got to do this kind of attitude, you will reap the benefits and you will see the goodness of the Lord and the benefits for being one of his children. And the gratitude that you have will grow. It really does. How does that work? I don't know why. And there are some times that I go, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Sorry if that disappoints you, but that's just who I am. I'm just going to be real. But I do it anyways. I do it anyways. And I'm always the one that's blessed by it and repenting of my bad attitude, because attitude really does make a difference. Y'all have a wonderful March 19th, and I will see you next time on Read Through the Word.